Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video live on YouTube out to you because you're watching. Thank you. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, anyone interested in surviving as a Pilates instructor or using Core New Tension in their own movement or the movement they teach to others. So it's like I have 4 things on my list today. And some of them are just ping pong games in my head, trying to settle on a way to talk about the title. But the title for number one is distinction. Distinction. You know, the person served with distinction. Distinction for me is being able to tell the difference, whether there is a difference to tell. What is the distinction? Is there one, right? What are the distinguishing characteristics of whatever you're talking about? And so when it comes to Pilates, here comes the ping pong game or the back and forth in my head. In some ways, we seek distinction from others, but in other ways, it's not that we seek distinction from others as much as we just want to share our personal art, which by definition is, well, maybe not distinguishable from others. And so to survive as a Pilates instructor, one of the ways that the reason I'm here is to help you profess that one of your distinguishing characteristics as a teacher, see, you don't even need to profess it, but it helps to have it in hand or within, as an understanding of an explanation. And the major, maybe not the major, but the distinction of MMP is that it is an explanation of Joe's original work. A theory is an explanation of facts, reaching for an ideal, usually based on some general principles. Isn't that amazing? Because that is so much of what MMP is stating or professing, that there's an ideal within the method, and to the extent that there is an ideal, this theory explains the facts of Joe's original work that allows you, and here's what's that allows you to go beyond the facts, to go beyond the original work, and with the understanding that you have, the explanation that you have, knowing the theory. See? A theory is an explanation of some facts. And to the extent that you're aware of the theory, it can empower you in what cues you make and what instructions you make, what exercise you pick next. So, number two is on one line male/female -- human. And on the next line of this title, it goes classical/contemporary -- ideal. And so, to me, there is so much friction might be a good word between the two subjects of male and female. And for me, there's no winning if you only pick a perspective at that level, no matter which side of it you're on, no matter how you feel about it. Because to resolve the friction, you have to get beyond that or go above that. And so I look at human beings before they get divided into male/female. Okay? And now, it's so long since I've rubbed up against it, but I'm sure it's still out there, that classical Pilates and contemporary Pilates have some friction between them, because by definition they're different, right? And there's no resolution to me of the subject of Pilates through that friction, or by choosing either of those categories. And that the only way out of the friction between classical and contemporary is to go beyond it, right? And from my biased point of view, but the point beyond that is the ideal that exists within. So I'm pointing to my explanation of Pilates and because I believe it's an ideal, right? That the ideal itself takes you beyond the friction that doesn't need to be there, or that exists if you set up the two things that create the friction. But when you look at an explanation of Joe's original work, the facts, and to the extent that the theory that explains that work is applicable, means that you can apply it, right? Not just doing Joe's exercises in Joe's order, but that you can aim for the same thing that Joe aimed for in any creative expression you can come up with. Now, personally, I'm a real fan of the purity of Joe's original expression. I look at it as a poem, as a synthesis of conditioning that is guided by reaching for an ideal, or ideals. So that takes me to number 3. Number 3. I've gotten curious feedback that instructors who are well trained in classical and contemporary are unfamiliar with what they're being exposed to from the ideal. That's a good way of putting it, right? I mean, there's my point of view, Michael Miller Pilates. Michael Miller Pilates is a brand, as a theory that explains the facts of Joe's original work. I get so enthused I lose track of where my enthusiasm is taking me. Oh, I'm on number 3. Good thing for notes, right? So number 3 is about my current focus being, who knows what will come to pass, but I'm trying to create the script for other instructors to present the explanation of Michael Miller Pilates. See, and that's what makes Michael Miller Pilates unique, among others, is it's an explanation of Pilates. It's not about what I've learned from people that knew Joe, or people that knew Joe that knew Joe that knew Joe. It's not what I've picked up through tradition, right? Michael Miller's Pilates is an explanation from essentially just Joe's book, right? And you know the 3 things out of Joe's book, and this would be part of what this script is about, is how do you explain Michael Miller Pilates? And then as another subject, potentially completely removed from Pilates, is how do you explain core new tension? Now I know they're hand and glove, but the hand doesn't necessarily need to wear the glove. Read. Number four. Number 4. This is specific. Of course, you know this stuff about being an instructor is that part of reading between the lines as an instructor in the moment is that when you give an instruction, if your student has to lean their head to favor one ear, well, if a student is leaning their head to hear you, well, first of all, if they're leaning their head, what does that mean? And it potentially means that they're working to hear you. And if they have to turn their head to do it, it means that the ear on that side isn't as good as the ear they're trying to expose, right? To me, a really good Pilates instructor doesn't say anything and doesn't make the client feel awkward to have to admit a struggle in the communication. It's up to you, the instructor, to seamlessly move to the other side so that the stress, tension is the stress, so that the stress is no longer there, right? And that's reading between the lines. If on the foot bar, the feet that might normally look like this and be at equal angles where one isn't at an equal angle, now right on the line, a Pilates instructor would see the imbalance of the angle and immediately go to balance, right? In pursuit of the ideal that Pilates is. That Pilates is. A pursuit of an ideal. But if your client is an instructor who's spent a lifetime in their own body and teaching other bodies, would that necessarily be the solution to just crank that to there? Because if it were, surely the student taking the session is aware enough in their own body that they would have addressed that. Right? Reading not just on the line, but between the lines, there must be something more to it than that. And so for whatever it is or might be, you might leave well enough alone, figuring that it's intentional and that it would be more obvious as the session progressed. And why is that? Because movement never lies. That's Martha Graham's quote of her father's. I like to say that movement reveals itself, or the body reveals itself through movement. I'm an instructor, the instructions are for movement, and the movement that you see, the body and the mind and the spirit, reveal themselves in following the instructions. So, I see it as a Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliate that has access to the script and able to offer the presentation of that script to make money for the both of us. And so, why am I doing all this? Well, I'm sharing my passion, but I'm also trying to pay my way through it. And the only way for me to make money, I think, really, is to help other people make money, right? Empower others to be empowered. And so there's, of course, my stickers, which to me is the best. It's the most fun to hand out a sticker to someone. And my training is about being a presenter in 3 seconds, in 3 minutes, in 3 hours, or 3 days. And be able to, for the most part, present the material within the time frame that you have. Right? And that, why is that? And why, I think this is, we'll see, who knows? Who knows? But to me, my explanation for why I'm headed in this direction is because of the tsunami of passion in Pilates is creating pressure to distinguish yourselves among everything else that's in that tsunami, right? And what there is evidence of is that people classically trained or contemporarily trained, those two across that spectrum of what Pilates is usually addressed as classical or contemporary, right? Well, to get beyond that friction, you go to ideal. That's why Michael Miller Pilates is transcendent, because it goes beyond classical and beyond contemporary to a theory that explains the facts. And even if the theory is unpopular or would some would prefer to ignore, what I have in my time is to share what I've got for you to help you survive as a Pilates instructor. And to me, there's nothing more potent than understanding and explanation of the facts, knowing the theory. And from understanding Joe's original work, from seeing it as the theory that it can be seen as, a tremendous empowerment to you in your confidence and your ability to distinguish yourself from others, right? Because just like when, sorry for this obscure reference, but just like in the TV series when Spock says to Dr. McCoy, watching Captain Kirk assembling ingredients, he says to Dr. McCoy, he says, he knows, Dr. McCoy, he knows, meaning that he knows how to assemble these raw ingredients in order to make dynamite and survive the encounter. And so there are musicians that are, I don't know much about music, but musicians can be extremely good from their ear alone, right? And yet there's this whole realm of the theory of music, and depending upon what degree of mastery on the subject of music you want, you sort of can't leave out theory. And I can't see how the same doesn't apply to Pilates. Life can't live forever. Such a beautiful day in Colorado. To be alive in May in Colorado is a wonderful thing. So I celebrate the fact that life can't live forever, because right now it's live and alive. Read between the lines. We talked about lines a little bit today. See behind the curtain. add 2 and 2. And see, when you add 2 and 2, you get something else. There's something that comes out of that. And so when you consider classical and you consider contemporary, when you add those up, one of the sums you might get to is ideal. Direct your own thinking. Direct your own thinking. And recognize that most of the world looks at Pilates through a hierarchical, authoritarian, credibility, legitimacy filter. And you and I and everyone is subject to that filter, and where and how we participate in it, and when, all that. Outside of that filter is an explanation of Joe's original work. And being a presenter would, in 3 seconds, or 3 minutes, or 3 hours, or 3 days, be able to explain Michael Miller Pilates, probably core new tension as well. Okay. Geist.